Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. It's 9:30 by our clocks up here, so I will call the public hearing to order, or we'll open the public hearing on the millage rate, and this is the third and final required hearing, which is required if a tax increase is going to occur, which from the budget, the chairman's budget, that would be the case with the increase in property values. So at this time, I'm going to ask our information director to run a little video, which I like, is very informative, and we might not watch all of it, but then Ms. Pollard will come up and give us some additional financial information.
From peaceful mountain towns to bustling metropolitan areas to small farming communities, Georgia is a great place to live and work and raise a family. Across the state, the places we call home have their own distinctive characteristics, each as unique and interesting as the people who live there. But as much as we appreciate the differences in our communities, there's one thing we expect all of them to have in common. We want them to offer us a good quality of life. And for that, we rely in large part on our local governments. From strong public schools to job opportunities. From reliable public safety to well-maintained roads and bridges. From facilities like libraries and public health centers to diverse recreational opportunities. Counties, cities, and schools around Georgia provide the services that keep our communities safe, clean, comfortable, and prosperous. The role of local governments is to provide services that enhance the quality of life and protect the health and safety of citizens. But how do we pay for all these services? In large part, it's through our property taxes. Local governments, our counties, cities, and schools use these taxes to finance services that add value to our property. Things like fire protection and law enforcement, parks and land use planning and zoning, sidewalks and storm drainage systems, the construction and maintenance of infrastructure like roads and bridges, and trash collection and animal control. Across the state, property taxes represent the largest local source of revenue for local governments.
So I need to pay my property taxes. Okay.
It's through our property taxes that we have local control over the services we use on a daily basis, things that directly affect our quality of life. But what does it mean for you and me? What value do we really get for our tax dollars? While individual bills vary, on average, a Georgia family pays a little more than $1,500 a year in all county, city, and school property taxes. Of that $1,500, what they pay to support roads maintenance for a year is about the cost of a couple of oil changes. Their contribution for library services, it's less than what you'd spend on one hardback book. What they pay for the county health department, about the cost of a bottle of cough syrup. And their share of courts and jails for a year, it's what there's been for 3 months of a private home security system. Across the state, every county operates in its own way. So the amount you pay and the benefits you receive depend on which county you live in. Some services, including courts and jails, emergency management and vital records archives for birth and death certificates and marriage licenses, are required by state law. Every county must provide these. Others, like libraries or parks, are discretionary. They are the ones we as citizens want in our communities, but not necessarily something the county is required to provide. But how do we know we're getting what we pay for? And how do we know that what we're paying is fair? For most of us, our home is our most important asset, and it's the most expensive investment we'll ever make. So the property taxes we pay, in essence, they're an insurance policy on our investment. because they pay for the county's services that help protect our property. Every property tax bill reflects several different components. In addition to our county taxes, if we live in a city, we may pay city taxes as well. We're also billed for schools, which represent the largest portion of the property tax bill, as much as 2/3 of the total amount. When our county commission, city council, and school board adopt these budgets each year, they take into consideration requests and recommendations from citizens, as well as expenditures required by the state or federal governments.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Then they estimate how much can be raised from sources like sales taxes, business taxes, and user fees. The remainder of the budget comes from property taxes. To calculate the tax rate, the percentage that will be charged, the amount needed from property taxes is divided by the total value of all taxable property in the county. This total value, also known as the County Tax Digest, includes not just homes, but businesses, apartments, industrial property, and farmland as well. The tax rate, that is the percentage we pay, is stated in terms of mills, with a mill equal to $1 per $1,000 of assessed property value. For tax purposes, state law requires property to be assessed at 40% of its fair market value. So, if your home is worth $100,000, its assessed value is $40,000. This is the value used to calculate your property taxes. But other factors affect what you're charged. There are various exemptions that can be deducted from the $40,000. For example, the state general homestead exemption, some local homestead exemptions, and exemptions for people over the age 62, and for disabled veterans. So to calculate your total taxable assessed value, you first subtract the exemptions from your home's $40,000 value. Let's say you qualify for a $5,000 homestead exemption, and you're eligible for a $1,000 exemption because you're 62 or older. Now, deduct these amounts, and the value you're taxed on comes to $34,000. Then, to determine how much you owe, you multiply the assessed value of your property by the millage rates set by the county, school board, and city. So, who are the players in the tax process? The Georgia Constitution requires that all property be valued in a uniform manner. And the Georgia legislature enacts property tax laws that determine which properties are taxed and which are exempt. Your Board of Tax Assessors is required by law to value your property at its current market value. To do this, the board hires a state-trained appraisal staff. The state enforces the requirement that appraisals be kept at market value by levying a fine on counties that don't keep property values current. Your county commissioners administer the property tax system in your county, but they have no role in appraising, billing, or collecting property taxes. The County Board of Tax Assessors and the Tax Commissioner carry out those functions independently of the county commissioners. The Tax Commissioner, an official you elect, sends you your tax bill and collects taxes. He or she then distributes the money to the school board, county government, and city governments. But what if you think your contribution in local property taxes is unfair? What recourse do you have? Well, first, make sure you review your annual property assessment notice as soon as you receive it. This notice is distributed in late spring to early summer, and you have 45 days from the time you receive it to exercise your right to appeal. Your first step is to appeal to your local Board of Assessors. If your concerns are not satisfied at this level, there are a number of options for furthering your appeal up to and including filing a complaint in Superior Court.
Jeff, let's go ahead and cut it
Your
right
assessment
there.
notice.
Okay, Ms. Pollard, if you would continue, please.
There we go. I apologize for those that have heard this for the third time, but we'll go fairly quickly, and then if we have any questions, I'll back up. So today we're here to have the third public hearing for the millage rate at M&O. We currently are at 6.5 mills. The calculation for property taxes is made up of 3 different components, with the millage rate being one of those. The assessed value, which is the video mentioned 40% of the actual fair market value. We are considering the tax digest as a whole. So we look at the entire county, where each individual looks at their property that they own. Millage rate is $1 per thousand, as they mentioned. So we have our assessed value, and then we have our gross digest, which is all of the 40% values added together for exemptions. Your net digest is after the exemption, so that's what the levy is actually based on. So as the assessed value goes up, according to the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, as the assessed value goes up, millage rate goes down, equals your tax levy. If you're going to have an increase in that, if either one of those is going to result in an increase in the tax levy, we have to go through this process. So we've put in the paper 5-year history that gives you a 5-year analysis of what's happened to the digest, how it's increased, how the exemptions have changed, and what's changed. At the bottom you can see the total tax levy and how that's changed from year to year. So the rollback rate, we're required to calculate the value today, take the gross value, the gross digest today, and use that in any increase as a result of reassessments. We have to go back and reduce the millage rate for that value of reassessment to get a rollback rate. And if you don't, then you have a tax increase. It's another way of saying basically what we went through in this ad, in this definitions. So we did that. We advertised a tax increase of 6.93%. That keeps us at 6.5. So it does not raise the millage rate. It keeps it at 6.5. But the rollback rate calculates back to 6.079. And as the bottom of this ad, it gives you an idea of what that does to each property tax homeowner. So it increases for a $150,000 house. The approximate increase would be $25.26, and a non-homestead $425,000 property would be $21.05. Value of 1 mil. So these are all 3 of the assessed value times the millage rate equals the total levy. So you can see the assessed value has gone down from 2008 to 2012. It reached its low, and then it began to increase. The mill rate has changed from 6.5 in 2008, and in 2012 is 8.29, and then it has reduced to its low of 2016 was 6.188, with a proposed millage rate for the 2018 digest year of 6.5. This gives you an idea of a picture of the same information. So what's happened to the levy, all the blue chart, the blue on the graph gives you the levy with the value of a mill in the red line at the bottom. Surrounding millage rates, these are last year millage rates because everybody's doing the same process currently. Cobb increased their millage rate by 1.7, so that 9.72 goes to a little over 11. I understand Polk is entertaining a millage rate increase next week from 11.061 to 11.5. So those are everybody's going through the same process right now. One of the things we looked at at the last meeting was the percentage of digest comparison, residential to commercial. And why is that important? Residential use the services. So commercial, the services are available to their employees, but they're not as frequent users of the service. So their employees are on the roads. Their employees are calling the public safety, and they assist, and their employees are sending their kids to school, but they're not. The commercial help offset that in many cases. What does this mean to the homeowner? 2017 value, if your house was valued at $169,200, the 2018 would be valued at approximately $182,000. Keep in mind that's different for everybody. So some went up more, some went up less, depending on where they are, and the sales around them. That is the assessment notices that went out June 1st or close there too. And those values had a 45-day appeal period. And now today, at the bottom part of this, the M&O, if everything left the same and your house value did go up $182,000, you do receive a homestead exemption, then your value in 2018 would be $70,800, your taxable value. And if you multiply that by the millage rate, your tax increase for this year is $33.28 for M&O, 10.7 for debt service, and 15.87 for fire, and 96.66 for school, with a total of 156.41, or a monthly amount of $1,303. So where do your tax dollars go? What we're here today is to discuss what's in blue. So the M&O 6.5, that's the portion that we're discussing today. The remainder is the debt service is a special district. It's required. You have to have the money to pay the debt that the county has. And the fire is a special district. Those are not required to have public hearings. And the school board went through this same process.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Okay. The M&Os where we are today, that's the hearing that we're in today. The debt and the fire, they're considered something like special districts, for lack of a better word. That the debt is
special district, but the district is the entire county.
right. And school, they've gone through the same process. So they held their 3 public hearings, and they have sent a letter of recommendation of millage rate approval in the amount of 18.879. And this goes to your budget. So your maintenance and operations portion of property taxes is used to fund about 40% of the budget. So that's why this is important, because each tax dollar that you pay in the 21% or the 6.5 results in 35% of that going to public safety, 24% to public works, and so on. Just breaks it down in a pie chart for you. As the video said, that's what you use to pay for the services. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Tabitha. At this time, we'll open the podium up to any of the citizens. That's why we call it a public hearing. So the board is here to listen to your concerns and for you to share with other citizens. So the lectern is open. Just come up and sign up.
Good morning. I apologize for being late this morning, but Fry Road and Mount Tabor has to be looked at. I almost broadsided a girl that pulled out in front of me. In that, there's so many wrecks up there. It's a terrible. Thank you.
They're gonna we're gonna realign those roads so that Fry and Mount Tabor line up, and they're gonna cut off George's in here. But I think they're gonna cut 5 feet out of that hill.
That's right.
To make it it's not as steep, so you get more visibility.
Right. There have been so many wrecks there, and it could have been very tragic, but I ran off and she ran off and we were okay. But that's the main thing. I just had a couple of questions I wanted to ask about the budget. I know I was here last time, but I wanted to look at it before I can make any comments. One of the concerns I had was economic development. I know we are getting some from SPLOST for economic development, but that seems to be going to be our bread and butter if we don't get that going. And I was surprised that there was nothing being, except for the SPLOST fund going into that. And I was just curious as to why that was.
I don't mind.
In the chairman's budget, well, there's 130,000, but if we go to another budget today, that will be taken out, and I would want Ms. Pollard just to affirm that.
That's correct.
If you don't mind, I'll answer that question a little bit more for you. Actually, if we don't have that 130,000 in this year, I believe it's the third year.
This will be year number 2.
Number 2 year? Okay. That's right, number 2 year. The third year I'm thinking about was where we cut it from 200 to 130. So I'll explain that, and I think I explained it at the last meeting. When the Economic Development Board, when they lost their director that they originally had was gone for over 6 months, they didn't use funds that were in their account. When Robert Reynolds came on board, we were looking at ways to trim the budget, and we sat down with him, Vernon and myself, sat down with Robert Reynolds, and it was agreed upon with Robert Reynolds that we would cut it $70,000 to trim the budget. And we told Robert that if something came up that they were in a pickle for, to come back to us mid-year, and we would see what we could do. And that was agreed upon by all of us, okay? Later, there's been some changes with the IBA and the Economic Development Board, and they've kind of merged together. Robert Reynolds now is paid through them. The IBA actually leased out the film studio back when we took the other 130,000 out of the budget, and they leased that out, and they were bringing in $480,000 a year, $40,000 a month, and they were keeping that. We can get into all kind of arguments about it. I think it was wrong. We weren't going to give them 130 when they weren't paying for the bonds, and that was when Economic Development and IBA came together, and Robert fell in under them. So yes, they are cut out, but they have not been paying for the bonds on the film studio and other things. In fact, the total bond payments between the IBA and the Airport Authority is a little over $1 million a year that we're not receiving. And so that's why that was cut out. But to answer your question, it originally was 200 that we were paying, and we agreed upon trimming it down to 130, and that was a mutual agreement between both of us. And then when they didn't pay anything when they leased out the film studio, it's like, we were giving you 130, now you're receiving 480, why would we keep giving you 130?
Okay. Anybody else? I have to disagree, but that's okay. But I think that is something that we as a community, and I think it was really resounded with the voters, we've got to get economic development on the board and going. And if I would think that money needs to be put back in there. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, and I also add to it that Todd is right. And I disagree with Todd in that it's unfair, because to me they need to be funded, whether they're funding themselves through the rent
Exactly.
from the movie studio, $40,000 a month, which now some things are happening there, might about be a sale, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that yet or not, but they are being funded, they are getting money, okay? We are making the bond payment, that is funding them. If they agree to make the bond payment, they're not making it, we are making it, that's like giving them money to do that. So that, they don't have to take that money out of their budget, they've got that money to spend on economic development.
Well, that, and I'm glad to hear that. My other, just an FYI, is I did visit the recycling center. Those people need a new bathroom. And I want you to really consider that. I don't know if y'all have been out to see it, Tony, I think you have, but it definitely needs, just go look at it, okay? And then my other just comment is, if you drop the 1501, if you drop your lawsuits, that money can go back and help this county, and it can help with economic development. So I'm respectfully asking you, Mr. Parnell, you, Mr. Collette, and you, Mr. Crow, to drop the 1501, and let's get rolling with something with the airport. I don't care if it's commercial or if it is just a great little airport that we can get going with some industry coming in, but that would be some money that could be used towards something else. And that's all I've got to say about it, and you don't have to respond,
Well, the
you know.
One little thing about that is the FAA has come out recently and said that it's going to, they dropped it. So it's going to remain a general aviation airport. The FAA has.
Right, I know that,
So
but I'm,
not-
so why won't you drop your lawsuit? It's been dropped by the
The lawsuit
FAA.
that we're trying to get the bond money?
Yeah.
The bond payments?
No,
We're trying to
no,
get the bond
against the airport authority.
For the bond payments?
Mhm.
Well, I feel like that Brett Smith owes, but he promised to make the bond payments. He's not making the bond payments.
But he
so we
stopped that.
should.
I don't want to argue with you about it.
It's not
He
arguing,
stopped
we
it
should.
because of the 1501 and that
Well,
you
he's
three
got a
have
contract.
done.
You just
And
can't-
your 1501 needs to
He's
be
got-
dropped.
He's got a contract with them. He can't just say, I'm not going to pay.
He's got a legal binding contract with the county as well,
No,
with the
ma'am, he does not.
with
He
the
does not.
airport.
No, ma'am, he does not. He does not.
There is no
No
contract
contract.
between Silver Comet and the county. There never has been.
Well, I
County
misspoke.
cloud's still
I
pending
misspoke,
right
but,
now.
but yes, there is a loss, he did drop that. He is not paying the bond payments. I understand all that, and I'm not here to argue anything about the airport. I just want you three, since the FAA has dropped the 139, I would like for you three to drop the 1501. And that way we can take that money and put it elsewhere. That's all I'm gonna have to say. Thank you.
I would like to make another comment. I would be glad today to put back $130,000 into economic development. In fact, I'd be glad today to put $200,000 into economic development, if the IBA and the Airport Authority will pay their bonds. The bonds that the citizens are on the hook for are $1,064,000 a year. $1,064,000 a year. And I'll do it today. I'll make the motion to put it in the budget if they'll pay that. I'll give $200,000 to receive $1,064,000. As a commissioner, we're supposed to be looking out for the tax dollars. And I can't continue to allow the IBA and the Airport Authority, and that's why I have to say it. And I've asked Mr. Carmichael since January of 2017 to fix it. And we can't continue to fund them, so we haven't cut economic development. They chose not to pay what they were supposed to pay. And so we said, well, if that's what you're gonna do and you're gonna run on that, then you don't need our $130,000.
Any additional citizens wishing to speak?
I want to know when this bond issue is, for the movie studio is going to be gone. I mean, we're on the hook for all this money. I'm a widow. I'm paying a lot of taxes for a very small house in a residential community. Most of the people in my neighborhood are living paycheck to paycheck. and we cannot afford this bond issue. So what I'm saying to you is, when is it going to be paid off? And what do we do to get rid of it? I understand that we paid for a movie studio that's not working. And I understand that there's been a bunch of stuff going on with the airport. But my problem is I don't see the money going into economic development. I see us becoming a community where we have too many houses, we don't have enough infrastructure, and our schools are busting at the seams. They just clear cut a whole bunch of land right behind Seven Hills for the school, for more housing. And I understand there's another development going in over there. Our schools right now cannot hold any more children, but we're getting more citizens coming in, and therefore we have no businesses picking up the difference between what I see on there as far as what our economic dollar is compared to what Cobb and Polk and even Floyd County. I mean, all the counties around us have more economic development. And I think that we have failed as a county of not putting in more economic development. What is the holdup? Why are we so undesirable? Why can we not attract more business? Where we don't have to pay higher property taxes and higher school taxes, and yet we have no economic development. Either the person who's in charge of economic development needs to be replaced, or somebody needs to start getting busy looking for some business. Is it the fact that we don't have any infrastructure? What is the problem here? Why are people not bringing businesses to us? Do we not have the infrastructure for a business to come in because of roads, sewers, and utilities? What's the deal? Tell me.
I would like to address that. If you know what went on back
Pardon
in...
me? Oh, sure. Sure, go
Back
ahead.
in the late 70s and the 80s, the federal government did a lot of grants for sewer. Most counties took advantage of it. Polk took advantage of it. Cobb County took advantage of it. Paulding County at that time decided not to take advantage of it. So I don't know why, I wasn't here. You have to go back and ask them, okay? I don't think they wanted to grow. But now, when we go out and talk to business, I've talked to plenty of businesses. I know right now a business that would come to the county but is not coming because there's no sewer hookup. Businesses don't want to come here and get on a septic tank.
No, you can't put a business on it.
You're right. And sometimes we've got businesses that have 2 and 3 septic tanks now. And lots of times they have to have them pumped, more often probably than they should. So the problem is, yes, the sewer has a lot to do with it. It's not the only thing. Most people I've talked to, companies, they love the county. They want to come here. But one thing we have to do is start making sure that we can put a little money aside every year and start catching up with the sewer. That would help a lot.
What was your name,
Not the only
ma'am?
thing.
Did you sign in?
Yes, my name is Dawn Erickson.
Okay. Don, you have identified our key significant problem. It's not so much the millage rate, which reflects back on your personal property values, but it's a tax base that is anemic. And if you looked at Ms. Pollard's graph up there, it stood out like a sore thumb. We're 12% commercial industrial when no other surrounding county is lower than 27%, and Douglas and Bartow are up around 38%. So that is the problem. That's why the services that we provide, services that you want, law enforcement, response, there's no other place to get it than the citizens unless there are those companies that are willing to come here. And we've got some good news. You know, we've got a Costco that's going to locate, and there's some other things that we have that aren't open for public information yet. But that is the problem, and when that balances out, that's when we will get relief for the taxpayers.
Okay, I have one more question. There is a piece of...
Can I say something?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Your question was, why are the businesses not coming here? That was your question, was it not?
Yes.
And you answered your own question. And Vernon answered your question. It's a lack of infrastructure.
Infrastructure.
Sewer, things of that nature. The surrounding counties that did take those grants are doing well. So often we hear, well, we don't have an expressway through Paulding County. Polk County don't either. They have the
No.
same road going through
Exactly.
that we have. So that's a valid question on your part, and I've asked myself that question once in office. And you've answered your own question. Until we correct our infrastructure in Paulding County, people are not gonna come here and look for this, so.
And the grants for sewer are no longer available.
No, they no longer exist. Now, the chairman and myself have sat in a meeting with a bonding company that handles this kind of stuff, but then again, if we do this bond, somebody's gotta pay for it,
Exactly.
okay?
And the 500 and whatever, or $1 million bond we're right now, how long is that gonna last?
That question was not answered.
The payoff on that particular bond is 2031. So
Wow.
it was a 20-year bond.
And we're on the hook for that now.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what our taxes are paying for, is that bond.
That's
And
part of the
somebody
debt
is,
service portion, yes.
and somebody is not paying us back that is supposed to be contributing, is that correct?
That is correct.
Well, a clarification on the film studio, and again, that was voted on before anybody sitting up here was on this board.
I understand.
All of
But,
them were.
but.
It's
I
an
was-
albatross around our neck, I'm
I was-
sorry.
Okay, but it's not, because it's paying $40,000 a month right now, and it hasn't always been occupied. But right now, Swirl Productions is in there, and they're really enjoying the location, and they're putting $40,000, like Commissioner Pownell said, which comes up to $48,000 a year if they stayed for a whole year.
Mm-hmm.
So they're making 2 movies in there right now. I got a tour
Okay.
through it last week. So right now, it's being productive for Paulding County. Now, Commissioner Pownell is also correct in that we need, as this board, as the Industrial Building Authority Board, as the Airport Authority Board, as the Executive Board for the Chamber of Commerce, we need to circle up in an open meeting, lay out all these bonds and what's owed and what property belongs to whom, and get all that settled. And I will pledge to do that. I'm behind on it, I just have not gotten to it, but I need to lead that charge.
Okay, I want to ask one more question. There is a piece of property right across the street from the hospital that I understand has no utilities whatsoever. Why can they not tap into the sewer and the water and everything from right across the street?
They can.
They can? Who owns that property?
I know who owns it, I'll say.
It doesn't, I don't know that we,
The two, I don't know.
that we should
Well,
just
it's,
say in a
uh,
public meeting.
There's an
It's,
investment company, I guess, a holding company.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. But I just see a piece of land that was supposed to be.
They're trying to sell it, they've talked to a lot of people. You know, if they could sell it, they would.
Okay, because I mean, it's just sitting there and nothing's being done with it.
Well, they want to sell it, they're trying.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dawn.
Tabitha, would you mind to put back up on the screen the report that you had and go to the surrounding counties? If that's okay. I truly believe we have in the past, and we need to support economic development. But I think we have to be realistic. It's a simple statement that I make when I say I'll be more than glad to give economic development $200,000 a year and go back to funding them if the IBA and the Airport Authority will pay their bonds of $1,064,000 a year. That's a no-brainer. But we can't sit here and just ignore it. And the chairman said he would lead the charge, and this is, I'm not trying to be negative, but I've asked for that since January of 2017. And it needs to be taken care of.
This one or this one?
The one before that, the one you just had.
That one?
Somebody had sent an email out this morning and talked about Polk County was gonna go to 11.5. That's what they were looking at, raising theirs to 11.5. Does Polk County have a fire tax?
They do not.
I don't think they, okay. So I want you to when you look at our M&O, and then you look at our fires in there, and then you look at our debt service, we're right there, pretty close to the same. Is that right, Ted?
11.67.
And they're going to go to 11.5. And we talk about, I believe in economic development. We talk about the number of commercialization dropping in Paulding County. Paulding County, what brought us to the dance years ago in the 70s and 80s was home building. And it brought us to the dance again back in the late 90s and 2000. And it's starting to bring us back to the dance again. And that number of commercial is going to drop when you've got as many homes being built. That is, and we need to work on commercial. I agree, but we have to be realistic with it. So we talk about Polk, and they said 11.5 is what I was told. Now, ours is 11.67. So now go to the next screen. Polk County has 28% commercial and industry. I'm not making an excuse. You have to look at the surrounding counties to see what's going on. And I understand we only have 12. But within reason, both of our millage rates are pretty close to the same. Whether or not your house will be valued at what it is today, here in Paulding, the same in Polk, I don't know. But as far as the total millage rate, other than schools, we're pretty close to the same. And I think sometimes you got to compare apples to apples. That 12% next year is probably going to be bumping 10. No matter what happens, because we've got so many homes that are already on the books, that were on the books from before this board got here. That were on the books 10 years ago that can be out there, and it's going to happen. So anyway, I just wanted to point it out that we've got to more than double that, but yet look at where they're at on their M&O and their millage rate and their taxes.
And I'll add to it, one thing that hurts us as a county too, and hurts the homeowners and residential, is that we have the lowest homestead exemption. I talked about that last year. I'd like to get it raised. Couldn't get a lot of traction with it, telling them the numbers won't work out. That's something, in my opinion, that we need to work on as a county and increase the homestead exemption across the board. I think the school board needs to be on board with it too.
And even though we're building a lot of homes, it's worth stating that Cherokee County is building a lot of homes just like Paulding is. They're on the outskirts of Atlanta like we are. But they are keeping pace with their commercial and industrial. And they always have kept pace. We're actually taking carloads over there to see what they're doing. Okay, anybody else desiring to speak today? Okay, I will close out the public hearing then, and we will move right into our August the 14th work session. And I've got mine. So we need to take a break.
5 minutes.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion. Well, I'll just adjourn the public hearing, and we'll be back in 5 minutes to start the work session.